At the start of 2022, I resolved to get through some of my gaming backlog. I completed 35 games in total, and most of them were great. Some were played on stream.
Told ya. Oh, Millennia, you're so
But most were played offline or with my wife. Overall, it was a pretty great year for gaming. But before I get to the big boy list, here are some honorable mentions in no particular order. Riftbreaker was a lot of fun. I kind of fell out of love with the tower defense style of games, but this one found a way to mix in action gameplay and base building in a really fun and refreshing way. I hope more tower defense likes take note and go in this direction because it really works. The voice acting was a little inconsistent at times, like it sounded like there was two different people voicing the AI companion. The story also tries to have this moral choice aspect to it, but it really comes down to like one decision at the very end. Still, overall, really great game. Resident Evil Village was the first Resident Evil game I've played in years. My wife really wanted to see it played, so I figured, you know, what the heck, go for it. This game is so off the wall and commits to its ridiculous premise so hard, and I love and respect it for that. The cheesy one-liners feel like they're right out of an 80s action flick, and it's more creepy than it is scary. Except for that one part where it decides to actually be terrifying. Also, I want Lady Dimitrescu to step on me. I played a ton of Heroes in Might and Magic growing up, and to see that magic recaptured in Heroes Hour was a real treat. I loved watching little battles play out so much so that I'd forget to cast spells sometimes, and as a filthy Necropolis player, I felt right at home with Decay. Boyfriend Dungeon was another game I only played because of my wife, and I'm really glad I did. The story is so wonderfully sincere, and the romanceable characters are interesting, complicated, and I love them all. Not you. The fact that so many different orientations and roles were represented and given care and nuance felt really nice. I'm really enjoying the rise of these thirsty games. They're kind of horny, but not in a crass or leering way. The only thing that's keeping this game out of the big boy list is the actual gameplay was just a tad underwhelming, and the difficulty spike on the final boss is a little silly. Vampire Survivor is the video game equivalent of crack concentrate. Everything in this game feels like it was designed to trigger every dopamine receptor in my dumb little lizard brain, and I love it. There's not really much else to say, honestly, just go check it out. Okay, enough faffing about, let's get serious. These are my top games of 2022. Satire is something that a lot of the video game industry struggles with. A lot of what people call satire is often parody, homage, or pastiche. Yes, I'm very fun at parties. When satire is attempted in the interactive medium, it often employs irony or just frames the object of ridicule as lame while still doing the exact same thing. No embellishment, subversion, or improvement. The only contribution being a wink or an eye roll. Too often this is done as a shield from criticism when the designer lacks an actual better way around whatever mechanic or trope they dislike. This is where The Looker sets itself apart. The game itself is a parody of The Witness, and the target of its satire is Jonathan Blow's game design / philosophy. The writing is sharp and clever, the jokes are well timed, and their punchlines almost always land. On top of that, the game is actually fun, like really fun. You can tell this was made by someone who really understood The Witness as a game, but didn't care for the pretentiousness surrounding it. I really hope Subcreation Studios continues to make this kind of game, because it's something that is desperately missing from the video game landscape, and other developers should take note. What Remains of Edith Finch is a game where you explore the home of the titular family matriarch and learn about the horrible fates that befell its residents and will eventually befall you. It's a beautiful and macabre work of art. It explores themes of validation, legacy, death, and the overall power of stories. It is an absolute masterclass in environmental storytelling. The more you take your time to explore the labyrinth that is Edie's home, the more you will be rewarded. The sprawling house of the Finch's cursed bloodline is crafted with so much care and attention to detail, it's almost unreal. Each death is presented in this highly stylized flashback that has some form of significance to the character who met their untimely end. And be warned, some of these are deeply disturbing, even while being presented without showing anything visually upsetting. In fact, the two vignettes that I found the most unsettling were also the most colorful and vibrant. This game is not for everyone. The subject matter is grim and the game itself is overall bittersweet. The story is ambiguous and will feel unrewarding if you aren't giving it your full attention. Despite all this, the game never feels pretentious or like it's wasting your time. It is a deeply earnest work of art that deserves your full attention and should be at the forefront of any discussion regarding video games as art. This is also art. The Ancient Gods DLC for Doom Eternal shouldn't be optional. This is an adrenaline rush distilled into a game. Doom 2016 was a return to form. Eternal refined everything that worked to a razor's edge, and the Ancient Gods used that razor's edge to snort methamphetamines. This is everything in Eternal turned up to 11. The gameplay is super demanding, but so rewarding when you get into that flow state. It's just like... Ooh, that's what I'm talking about. And the soundtrack, can we talk about the soundtrack? Because this game is actually just a metal album with a bonus full game attached. How are you not playing this game right now? This is raw, unfiltered fun. Your skills will be pushed to the limit and you will love every second of it, I promise. Tyranny is a game that understands that the best part of the role-playing experience isn't necessarily the plot, but the characters in it. Where most games would say, "Hey, you there, adventurer, there's an evil king that only you can defeat. Please, save us." And Tyranny instead goes, "No, that guy won. You helped, actually. Deal with it." We enter the game assisting the evil Lord Kairos in the final stages of his world conquest. All that's left to do is quash the final rebellion that sprung up in the wake of our victory. That's where you come in. You are this world's equivalent of Judge Dredd. Whatever you say goes, and your words carry the weight of Kairos himself behind it. Will you use force and fear to control those who would oppose you, or do you win them over with diplomacy and tactic? Both are valid paths and are not necessarily mutually exclusive. Do you retain your humanity as you progress through the story, or do you abandon all morality for the pursuit of power? Do you listen to those in the rebellion and risk opposing your masters, or do you help them see the error of their ways? How will you deal with political rivals, both from above and below your station? There are so many different paths to walk in this game, and no right or wrong answers, only consequences for your actions. Your traveling companions and their evolving morality and understanding of the larger world are what really set this game apart. While companion quests are nothing new, I was more invested in getting Barrick out of his literal shit cage armor than brokering peace between two military factions. I wanted to help Versus process the death of her sisters more than making contact with a tribe of primal beastmen. You may be the main character, but your companions are the real stars of the show. On the gameplay end of things, the combat is fun and feels like everything I loved in games like Baldur's Gate, but updated for the modern era. The UI is really well thought out and has some absolutely great features in it. If you have any love for classic CRPGs, this is more than worth your time. Glory to Kairos. In a surprise to even myself, Elden Ring takes the penultimate spot for top game played in 2022. That's not to say I didn't love it. Heck, I loved it so much, I did this. This is yet another masterpiece from Software. What is there to say about this that hasn't already been said? The combat is tight and satisfying, the lore is more dense than a black hole. Most of the bosses are incredibly well designed. If you liked any of the other Souls games, then you already know what you're in for and you know you're going to love it. What sets Elden Ring apart from its series siblings is the open world exploration aspect and what an open world it is to explore. Nothing will surpass your first playthrough. Every dark cave, every catacomb, every dungeon feels new and exciting, and you cannot wait to see what's around every corner. From Software knocked it out of the park with the open world design, making every inch of the lands between feel exciting and special. That being said, I still think some of the bosses leave a lot to be desired. The back third of the game really drags, and nowhere is this more apparent than in subsequent playthroughs. Mountaintop of the Giants is particularly egregious in this regard, to the point that parts of it straight up feel unfinished. Also, every dual fight feels slapped together, and most of them are just straight unfun. I like the addition of spirit summons, but I don't know if the game was actually balanced around them. Some of the late game health bars suggest that it was, but the fact that boss AI has no idea how to handle two opponents means that most fights were outright trivialized because of this. Damage and health in general feel kind of all over the place, especially with some of the more powerful weapon arts. All these things feel like a step back from a lot of the great strides that were made in Dark Souls 3. And again, I love this game. It's probably my second favorite From Software game of all time, but all these little mistakes add up when the game is this big. Even still, I cannot wait for the DLC for this game, and I'm sure I'm going to be playing a lot more of it both on and off stream. This game broke me. Yes, Your Grace is one of the most beautifully affecting works of art I have ever experienced. The game loop is very simple. You play as King Eric sitting atop your throne and listening to the pleas of your petitioners. You decide if they will be granted assistance or spurned. Sometimes that decision is easy. Other times, interests of your rival kingdoms or your own treasuries must be considered. That's all assuming you even believe what they have to say in the first place. Sometimes you know the right decision but can't make it in good faith. Others, you must make a difficult choice without all the necessary information. After a session in court, you interact with your servants, citizens, and most importantly, your family. This is where the game becomes something really special. The initial premise is very straightforward. Long ago, you made a deal with a bandit lord to secure your kingdom, and now he's come to collect the agreed upon payment, your eldest daughter's hand in marriage. Now the game asks, what will you pay to keep her safe? What deals and alliances will you broker to protect your family? What will be left of your family to protect? After all, you have 2 other daughters, and armies don't come cheap. What starts as a simple goal unfolds into something far more complex as the story evolves. To say this game pulls the rug out from under you several times would be the understatement of the century, but to discuss it any further would be to rob the story of its impact. This isn't a long game and can be finished in 6 to 8 hours, but what it does in that short amount of time far surpasses every 40+ hour AAA game I've ever played. Don't be fooled by the lo-fi pixel graphics, you will care about them deeply. The journey is comedic, somber, intriguing, tense, and gut-wrenching, without ever giving you a sense of tonal whiplash. It pulls off this difficult balancing act beautifully while being fun and engaging. My only possible criticism is that not all decisions really matter in the end. However, this is only really known with the gift of hindsight. But this is so often the case in real life that I almost feel like it works in the game's favor. What makes a good king? What makes a good person? At the end of everything, can you call yourself either?